Hello to you and welcome to Adelante Chicago. I'm Lourdes Duarte. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bienvenidos. Let's begin with a look at changes that President Trump plans to make when it comes to policy for one of the gems of the Caribbean. In the last year, thousands have traveled to Cuba, but could that all change? WGN's Marcelo Raymond has reaction to the Trump shift.
Cuba, President Trump's tightening of regulations was met with concern and disappointment, especially in the business community, both there and here, that will have to jump through even more hoops in order to do business. Charlie Serrano is one of those businessmen. He spoke with us from Havana today.
What it does send a message to every American businessman is that this is creates an instability in the business mentality for those corporations that are making an effort right now to develop strategies on how to do business with Cuba.
Companies like Illinois-based Caterpillar, one of the leaders in the business community's efforts to normalize relations with Cuba. The island country's main money-making industry now has been tourism, helping Cubans to create B&Bs and restaurants that cater to Americans. Now only groups, not individuals, can travel to the country.
To reimpose travel restrictions is just doubling down on a failed policy.
Vicki Curtis, an associate pastor at Fourth Presbyterian Church in Chicago, works closely with its sister church in Havana. Under President Obama's plan, she saw the lives of Cubans getting better. Now she fears all that progress will be for nothing. Senator Dick Durbin agrees.
Now Donald Trump wants to start closing some of the doors that Barack Obama opened. That may satisfy a handful of voters in Florida. It's not going to help overwhelmingly our relationship with this country.
Marcella Raymond, WGN News.
And thank you to Marcella for that report. Joining us now to talk a little more about this is Charles A. Serrano. He's with Antilles Strategy Group, and you saw him in that piece talk about business in Cuba, travel to Cuba, and so I'm happy to have you here this morning.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
Okay, let's talk about what this means and this shift, right? So they are rolling back, or they'd like to roll back some of the policy that Obama put in place, that President Obama put in place. What does it mean in terms of travel to Cuba? So if I wanted to go to Cuba tomorrow, can I still do that?
You could do that if you fall within 10 categories. There used to be 12 categories, supposedly. 2 of those have been eliminated. The 2 that mainly have been eliminated, now this is a long explanation gone real short, is that people would do like their self-certifying. I'm gonna go over there, talk to Cuban people. So it's like people-to-people exchange. No, can't do that. I'm going to go over there for some cultural visit. But what concretely are you going to do in Cuba? That is what has been eliminated. That is what really freed up a lot of people and the airlines to really go in, that people self-certify and say, I will do this. But when they come back, no one's asking questions whether or not you're doing it. So now you have to prove that you are going for some cultural exchange, academic exchange, although cultural and people-to-people is being eliminated. But, you know, still, there are many organizations and institutions that have these licenses, although they were not needed anymore, that is going to probably be easy to go ahead and just say, this is what we're going for. But the common person that goes on American Airlines or any other airlines to make a reservation and just go, those are the people that are going to now find those limitations, that you cannot just go for that.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is that you now have to be crafty in how you book and make that trip to Cuba, right?
Or else they should actually call experienced people, myself one included. We're now going to celebrate 25 years of operating in Cuba. We've done over 175 trips, you know, about 130 business trips, and these have taken people down there. So what we do is that a group, or a big enough group, some foundation or university, we have universities in the state of Illinois that have been going down to Cuba since 1999 with us, 95 and 96, Southern Illinois University, the University of Illinois.
You facilitate all
so,
of
and then
this.
we facilitate that, and then more importantly, the meetings. How do you get somebody to go into a meeting to some non-for-profit down there in culture, music, or handling groups?
Let's talk about this change, because it's not drastic, so then why do it?
Well, it was, in our opinion, my opinion, and my company's opinion, this was something to appease the Marco Rubio and Senate vote. that the Trump administration needs so badly? Are you going to do anything that would be contrary to Obama? And this is just, for us, that kind of move. It doesn't have any teeth. When President Obama made the change to Cuba, which took actually 2.5 years to figure out what to do, these were policy regulatory changes. These run deep. They run into processes and so on. Most of those departments are now closed. They have been de-staffed. There's no staff monitoring who's going to Cuba. There's no staff handing out licenses. So when you say you're going to change us to do this, and then there's no money, none of these places have it.
It's tough to stop the train,
right?
right?
The
because
train
it's
is
already
running.
going.
I've always said it's an electric train, so it's not going to run out of gas. It's fueled, it's full. As Senator Durbin said, he's rightly said that most of the staff we have changed, both in State Department and in the embassy. I was actually in the embassy of the United States Embassy in Havana when this change was taking place and the president was announcing. And one thing I realized is all of their staff has changed. So we used to have a combative kind of motivation on Cuba. For the last 2 years, we have changed all the staff to cooperate, to talk to Cuban personnel, the Cuban Foreign Ministry, which is called MINREX. Our personnel, United States American personnel, now talk to them. They communicate.
So you have to change the
So you're going to have
culture,
to change the whole culture of all of that.
Let me ask you this, because you deal a lot with businesses that
Yes.
want to do business in Cuba, right? But when you watch President Trump come out and say that there's going to be a change in policy, doesn't it then slow down growth or scare a business owner who may be thinking about investing in Cuba from doing so because they don't know what's coming next?
Yes, totally. We've been in the Caribbean for about 35 years. In countries like Venezuela and Ecuador, in Brazil and Venezuela and the Dominican Republic and even Puerto Rico, whenever any company goes into a foreign country, this is a process. This is a legal process, regulatory, try to think about it. It's a process of a year and a half. So today, if your company is interested in going to Cuba, you have eliminated that idea. But those that are also in process start thinking, hey, this is going to be a problem. I've already been doing it. We presently have 4 contracts in operation, in process, from a level of MOU to actually doing some business in Cuba. We have an organization that for the first time ever has brought students from Cuba, Cuban students, to come and study in Maryland at the Institute of Art. That's from the Latino Art Institute, the first organization ever to do that. And with all the permits, it took us almost 4 years to do that. So if you know that the president is going negative on a policy that's already rolling to be positive, to have normalized relationships, you're dealing on risk. You're going to tell your lawyer, stop this program. And that sort of ends. And here's the problem, Lourdes. When you stop something like this, if you want to start it again, you don't start where you left off. You have to now go back and start those relations and move it forward. It's a waste of taxpayer money. It's a bad way to do foreign policy. It isn't the most productive decisions that an administration could make, is to go negative and go against. But I am of the belief, if you have an embargo, have an embargo. If you don't have an embargo, or you're pretending to have an embargo, we need to eliminate that and do what's best for the American public.
Charles Serrano with his insight today on exactly how the policy change will affect the people in Cuba and the people here in the U.S. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me here.
Nice to have you. All right, stay